Welcome, everyone, to Tim's Vinyl Confessions. I'm Tim Derling, and I have assembled a cast of characters that have all been on here before, but not together, and I like when that happens. Of course, I've got Mike Ladano returning from Grab a Stack of Rock. I've got Chez, who's been on countless times, and from Rush fans, my old buddy Ryan Murphy. And you might guess through the tea leaves, reason I've got Ryan on here is we're all here to talk about the recently released Rush 50 set. And man, oh man, this thing is so classy looking. And yeah, there's a lot to dig into here. And this is of course, a 50-year retrospective of Rush. And even though it's technically 54 since or 51 since the first album, we've talked about that a lot. They've been off by a year for a while, and they haven't been able to get it back, not even with the gap year in between Signals and Grace Under Pressure. That anyway, uh, but all jokes aside, this is a pretty substantial collection. Ryan and the Rush Fans gang already did an unboxing video for this, which I'm going to link to at the end of this video. But I thought I'd like to get Ryan here, and then Chez and Mike, and have us all um, talk about this set. I mean, there's a lot to take in. I guess we'll get started. With Ryan. Basically, when did this thing first come up on your radar? When were you first made aware of it? And, I guess how excited were you for this?
Well, I forget when it was announced, but it was sometime late last year, I think. And of course, immediately once it was announced, that's when it hit my radar. My excitement level was pretty minimal, to be completely honest with you. Even as a huge Rush nut, I mean, the excitement for moving pictures and signals and all those box sets were through the roof. But this was like, okay, it's a collection of tracks that we've mostly heard before, right? And are either if they're not released, they're on YouTube. So the excitement level was pretty minimal at first. That changed. I'm sure we'll get into that, but yeah, it was. I was like, meh, okay, probably won't buy it, but here we are.
Yeah, that was, I'll come back around to myself. But Mike, what did you think when this first was?
Well, I think I probably first heard it from you. And as soon as I saw Can't Fight It and Not Fade Away, I was like, okay, so budget, we're going to do this. No problem. Yep, insta buy. Because physical product guys like me, I'm never going to own a physical copy of the original single. Let's face it. Let's be realistic. I have a bunch of bills, just like everybody else. But a $160 box set, I can afford that. And in my mind, I now own a physical copy of that first single because this is just the way I collect. I'm not like other collectors that collect all the albums. I have to have every pressing, I have to have every compilation. I collect every song physically. As long as I have every version of every song ever officially released ever by every band that I like, I'm happy. So for me, Rush 50, it fit the bill, and there's a bunch of other great stuff on here as well. My very favorite version of Garden Road. Um, yeah, I was excited from day one. I like these anthology style box sets. My very first box set ever when I was a kid was Led Zeppelin. And as you know, Led Zeppelin had a grand total of four previously unreleased tracks, but it was my first, and it was my first Zeppelin. And this kind of takes me back to those times when I just immersed myself in that box set. I'm happy, in short.
Yeah. And Chez, what were your initial thoughts on this?
Yeah, I saw it announced on kind of like a rumor on one of these music sites on Facebook, and then got really excited because I am a big box set fan. And when I knew it was for real, and I saw it was going to be like a chronological take, like Mike, I love chronological anthology, and especially box sets. So I was very excited to get this, and even more excited on how they chose the tracks. And I'm sure we're going to get into that. So yeah, I was very excited, and couldn't press pre-order fast enough. So and glad it's here, and happy to be talking about it with everyone here.
Yeah, once I saw that, I mean, when I saw that it opened with Not Fade Away and You Can't Fight It, um, quick backstory on those songs. I didn't hear those songs. I'd read about them, but I didn't hear them until I'm going to say 2001, where a friend of mine sent me a burned CD of a bunch of various songs, and I knew enough very quickly to realize what it was I was listening to. Now, is it the greatest? Are they the greatest songs in the world? No, but Rush is a band where there's so little stuff that wasn't on the albums. They always had such high standards, and they always figured that outtakes were just that stuff that wasn't good enough. This is a little different. I mean, this is a young band, and this is the very first single they released. And, Not Fade Away is a Buddy Holly song, and the Stones did it. Tons of people have done it. But You Can't Fight It is a Lee Lifeson original. So that's an original Rush song. And it doesn't sound that different than a lot of songs that ended up on the first Rush album. If you can imagine a scenario when that album had 10 songs on it instead of 8, well, that's what it could have been. I mean, that's not how it turned out, but it was it was the white whale. It was the one of the ultimate holy grails for a lot of Rush fans because there was one pressing of it. I've seen it on sale for $2,000. It was on Moon Records. It didn't even get to Anthem Records. It was never on any reissues. And there was plenty of opportunities to do that over the years. And so yeah, and these are studio recordings. So we also get songs that honestly I had on a one of those gray area uh, discs, not exactly a bootleg, but the ABC 1974. I've also seen it released as New in Town. I've seen it released under different, but it's Rush, doing a radio broadcast, being recorded live over the radio, and they do Garden Road, which is another original song that was never, as far as I know, never recorded in studio. There was the Larry Williams song Bad Boy that they did, which the Beatles had done. There's two different versions of that I've heard, and the version that's on this set is different than the first one I heard. The first one I heard is a much beefier recording. It's a different recording. They did that a lot in the early days, even on up till after Neil joined, before they had enough material for a set. But they both feature like a blistering, standalone guitar solo from Alex Lifeson, and I mean that's really it for other songs. But there are a lot of live versions of songs on here that were either only on home videos and they were never put on, just audio, or they were left off some of the live albums. Different, we'll get into that, but um, it was kind of a no-brainer. It was the first new thing to come out from Rush for a long time. I mean, we're not getting anything new, but um, yeah, I bit the bullet. I did spring for the vinyl set. I got the CD set, and I'm completely happy with it. So let's get into the packaging. So this thing, honestly, when this came in the mail, I thought that there was a screw up and they had sent me the vinyl version. But I very quickly realized that no, it's just this really, really nice front back cover here. This really nice book style with a nice tassel for a bookmark. And this thing, and I haven't even, had time to really go through this with all of, a fine-tooth comb, right? But there's, it's Hugh Syme artwork, and Hugh worked overtime on this because there's artwork on almost every page. There are some articles in here, like there's a write-up from David Frick from Rolling Stone. Um, a compilation, I think, of different articles, to be honest with you. But one of my favorite things about this is that Hugh, once we get past the text, Hugh has gone and done artwork for almost every song on here. For example, that's Fly By Night. And Ryan, when I saw that Fly By Night, it immediately reminded me of the episode we did uh, where we talked about Hugh Syme artwork that wasn't for Rush that could have been. That's what it made me think of. But hit Bastille Day. I know it's not easy. It's awkward for me to hold this up, but yeah, almost every song has its own artwork, and it's chronological, but it's chronological in that it jumps around a little bit as far as when the original songs came out, but it follows the timeline of the live tracks. Um, so Ryan, not to put you on the spot, but I'm gonna put you on the spot. I know you're not the biggest fan of the first Rush album and that early material, so I can see why the bait, as it were, of Can't Fight It and Not Fade Away might not have had the same resonance for you. But you know, are you glad to actually, at the very least, own a copy of these songs now?
Yeah, I mean, I've actually come around quite a bit on all these songs since doing that pop-off episode about the quote worst Rush album, and I said it was the original or the debut album. Of course, I don't like using the W word
I
with
know,
Rush
least favorite,
anyways. Yeah, least
preferred.
best. But yeah, no, I mean, it's funny because I've been listening to I buy all of it through iTunes, like so I've been listening to that in the car and here and everything. I've come around on these songs too. Like it's good stuff. It's not the best of Rush, right? But it's still Rush. It's almost for me like I probably heard Not Fade Away, You Can't Fight It, Bad Boy, Garden Road, or maybe Garden Road a little bit more. But the first three that I listed once, twice on YouTube, like over my almost 20-year fandom of listening to Rush, and this is almost to me like discovering new Rush in a way.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
that's why that's why the excitement level went much higher after I learned of it until now, right? So yeah, I'm happy to own them for sure.
And they did, I think they did a pretty good job remastering them. These would have been,
Yeah,
the John Rutsey's drums on there almost, they're so small sounding, even compared to the first record,
sure.
because I think Terry Brown remixed the first record. Um, but you can see you can see that's the direction that they were heading in. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's why, even though, yeah, it costs what it costs, for me, it's practically like, you haven't heard these songs as many times as you've heard the Rush albums. Like I said, there are so few of these sort of extra songs. Chez
Can
and
I
Mike,
just
were you guys familiar with the
Chronicles?
songs on this first single? Yeah, solid.
No, Chronicles.
It
It
looks
does
Doesn't
kind
very,
of,
it?
yeah.
it
Doesn't it look
matches.
like?
Chronicles
It
Yeah,
basically a
matches.
darker version of that.
yeah.
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 But Chez and Mike, were you guys familiar with the songs on the single, or were you just aware that they existed?
Just aware, never heard them until I got the set. I'd heard of them, that they were out there. I guess I could have checked them out on YouTube. I just for some reason never did. And like you getting that, it was like wow, I felt I was hearing something special. And like Mike said, now I own it, and
Yeah.
I was very excited, you know, just to hear like the early beginnings of the band that we all love. So yeah.
I think they did a really good job with. I'm going to get the trouble with these sets is it came with this really nice. I don't even know what you'd call it. It's not a J card, like an L card, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah, I got
I don't
we
know what to
talked
do with
about
these
that.
things, but
We talked
it's
about that a
got.
bit on packaging fails, how that can just become lost if you're not careful with what you do with your box set.
Of course,
Let me
we're
show
all
you what I
very
did with
careful,
mine.
right?
See how this closes like this, or rather, how this is open. I tucked it,
Okay.
That's
Oh,
what I
so Ryan, you got the vinyl set.
and it almost serves as like that, so it covers it. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
perfect, but I mean that's what I did.
Yeah.
I did that too on the CD one. Just got
Fits.
it.
Completely
Yeah.
on
No, it
accident.
fits. Thank you,
Yeah.
Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, I did it completely on accident when we did our unboxing. I was like, "What do I do with this?" And I was like, "Wait a second,
That's probably the first time this has worked out for me
so
that way. So I
these
didn't
don't
even try
fall
it.
out."
Yeah.
Tim, in regards to your question earlier, I was very familiar with these songs because I downloaded them off LimeWire like 20 years ago and burned them to a custom CD single. So, I'm pleased as punch to have them original.
Yeah. Now, what I'm wondering about, where's Fancy Dancer? That's like the other
Yeah,
song that there were recordings of that predated the first album. I'm just, and to me it's no more or less, let's call it primitive than Garden Road is. I'm just kind of wondering why they didn't throw that on there too. So I'm kind of still glad I've got that full Cleveland concert, but that's so minor. And looking at this, there aren't a lot of studio versions of songs on here, which I like. because people like us that buy these things, we've got the studio versions. We don't need, other versions of them. There's the key songs, Tom Sawyer and Closer to the Heart and Fly by Night, but there are a lot of live songs on here, and there are a lot of live versions of songs that if you didn't buy all of the deluxe versions that have come out in the last few years, you wouldn't have them. And then there are some other treats like, for example, Working Man Vault Edition. Let's talk about that.
Right.
Completely different solo from Alex.
Right. I downloaded that off iTunes before I had iTunes. My sister downloaded it and sent it to me, and I burned it to a custom CD single, which I have filed with my Rush stuff. So glad to have it physically. But the trees, I never knew there was a vault edition of the
Ryan,
trees.
do you know where the trees vault edition came from? Because it seems to me the Working Man vault edition was it Guitar Hero?
They were both for Rock Band, I believe.
Okay, I didn't know about the trees.
I used to play those games when I was younger. The Rock Band had a bunch of like downloadable content, like songs you could buy after purchasing the physical copy, and the vault editions were done for that. Now, I don't know if the trees was ever in the game, but as far as I know, it was done for the game. So
would have been done at the same time.
Yes, yeah. And the trees doesn't even have an alternate guitar, so it's virtually the same as the studio. The trees is a lot more like the actual studio version than Working Man is, but it is still cool that it's almost, I don't know if you've heard, there's a couple alternate versions of like Vital Signs and Subdivisions on YouTube. I don't know how like real that is in terms of if those were actually original releases or alternate releases, but the sound quality is different, and the trees version of it reminded me of those alternate editions. So
there's just such a handful of songs that people like us sort of clamor for. Like there's that song called it's called Tough Break that Tony Geranios, their keyboard tech, sings, and I think it's the guys on, you could find it on YouTube, but it's from the early 80s. It's kind of a weird, it's not kind of a cool song, but it doesn't sound like Rush other than the instrumentation. But there's that song. There's a part of me that kind of wishes they put Battle Scar on here because I'm a Max Webster and a Kim Mitchell fan. I mean, that's half Rush. I mean, Rush are all over that song, and it would have given the Max Webster name a little nod. Apparently Mercury wanted to put that on Chronicles, but the guy said no. Um, but I mean, yeah, having those vault editions, finally having, I'm guessing that the live version of Vital Signs on here was the one that was cut from Exit Stage Left and ended up on the New World Man single. See, Rush is a band that not only do they not have alternate songs as B-sides, there weren't even a lot of live versions that were released as B-sides that are rare. Like they were very, very serious about if it's not up to snuff, we're not putting it out and we're not going to put out something substandard. But I think that everybody involved with this did a really good job at assembling this because, if you're, I don't know why a casual Rush fan would buy this, but there are enough of the familiar songs on each of the 4 discs, or I guess it's a 7 LP, 7 records, to keep the casual listener say, okay, oh, I know that song. Oh, then I know that song. So they do it in chronological order as to when they were played. But I think they made some pretty good choices as to what songs they included in their studio forms and which ones they included, in live versions. Now, we're going to get nitpicky because we're Rush fans, right? It's what we do. There's something else I wish they'd have put on here. The original single mixes for Caravan and BU2B, the single that came out in 2010 ahead of Clockwork Angels.
Sure.
But, that's so minor, right? Like, I love the fact they put Superconductor on here.
I love that.
That was a surprise.
That's never been on a compilation before, and it was a video. So, I really don't have any gripes with this. Is there anything that you guys notice that isn't on here that if it were up to you or if you had a hand in it, I'm speaking to Mike specifically because I know that he's had his hand in box sets before, or has he at least had his name on them.
Yeah. You know what? I was wondering about this question earlier today, but I was so busy I didn't get to check. But it's just an early warning on here in studio
Oh
form.
yeah, just an early, I
Okay.
believe that I believe it's the version from A Show of Hands.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
In my
live.
case, I would have preferred the studio version. But again, we're talking minor
It's
nitpicky stuff
yeah,
here, right?
it's minor.
I what I appreciated is that they did include the studio versions of the songs that are kind of like the big hits, you know, the Tom Sawyers and the Subdivisions and those kinds of things. Um, because I think when, you know, Tim, I think there are casual Rush fans that will buy this box set. Like if they find it in the store and they have some pocket money, they're like, you know, I like Rush, sure. And, you know, they're going to want those studio versions for the big hits. But I think, and we talked about this offline a bit, I think the live tracks they selected are some of my favorite live versions of some of these songs. Like you talk about Vital Signs, I'm thinking this might surpass. This might be my favorite version of Vital Signs. I don't know. It's early days. I've listened to the thing twice.
And what I like about that is that, I love Exit Stage Left. And this is like this belongs on Exit Stage Left, but I haven't heard it as many times. So it's a little bit like hearing Exit Stage Left the first time. It's like just let it play a little longer and you'll hear Vital Signs. Ches, what are your thoughts as far as the track listings?
I love it. I love that they picked. I think this is so cool that they picked a song from each release, including the deluxe releases with the extra live. In terms of what I wish was on, my favorite Rush song isn't on there, Analog Kid. But what I was hoping, and it kind of brings me back to the Signals deluxe box. I don't know if maybe one of you guys knows the answers. So when the Signals box set came out, there was no live show because all of them had a live show, and I think we all thought that was a little strange, right? So I'm thinking, oh, I wonder if we're going to get some live cuts from a Signals tour on this. So we didn't see that. So that's my only one. My favorite song. I was hoping it was on there, like in a live version or even the studio version. I would have loved, but that's the only one. It's very minor. I just love how the sequence, like Mike said, some of the choices. Like I bought every Rush live album on CD when they were coming out, like in the '90s, and they reformed in the 2000s. There, I love the choices they picked. I think they sat down and said, we're going to go with this one. This was when we sounded the best on this one. So
Yeah.
great choices. And it just takes you through a journey. Like as fans, I'm sure it's like from the beginning and we're listening. I love the chronological. I know sometimes people like them mixed up, but I like chronological because it kind of takes me through a journey of when I was a fan and buying the releases when they were brand new. And like I started buying Rush consistently with Roll the Bones. Like that,
Yeah.
bought that on release day, and every Rush album after that I bought on release day. And of course, I went backwards like we all do. So just brought back a lot of great memories and just on a journey and mesmerized with the artwork in that book. Fantastic.
Oh yeah. Us showing it on here doesn't do it justice, folks. The artwork that Hugh Syme came up with for I think almost every song is pretty amazing. I mean, I think that started with Snakes and Arrows, where every song had its own artwork, but it's such a great idea. And
No, I
as
actually
far as
started
when I
with
got on board with
Counterparts.
Rush, then that would have been
Counterparts, you're right. Yeah.
Counterparts.
yeah.
Counterparts and Test for Echo
Oh
each had
right,
their
no,
Yeah.
own.
yes,
Yeah.
you're right, you're right. Um, but for as far as when I got on board as a Rush fan, it would have been like halfway through disc 3. So with Hold Your Fire, that's kind of the period when I Hold Your Fire was the first album that came out that as I was a Rush fan, already a Rush fan. Um, Ryan, is there anything like, if you had it to do, what would you like to have seen on here that maybe wasn't on here?
Well, a couple things I want to say. Mike, you mentioned that all the hits are studio. I never really even like recognized it as that, and that's a really good point. And it seems strategic for sure. Like it seems like that was done on purpose. Um, Ches, what you said, Analog Kid, Clockwork Angels version of Analog Kid, man, that would have been perfect for this. I can't disagree with that. We're gonna actually do a Rush Roundtable episode about how we might reimagine this, like what songs we would have put on it from top. We're gonna do 50. So I haven't done mine yet, so that's just a little bit of foreshadowing for me and cross promoting. But I mean, if there were songs that I would have put on here, I mean, I don't know, man. It's tough because I think they selected a lot of good songs. I mean, I think maybe a song like Marathon's missing. I think that's a pretty beloved track that's sort of deep, that could have fit relatively well, especially from the Time Machine tour, a live version of that.
Yeah.
Um, but
It's funny you
I
say
think
that
overall they did a good job.
because then I get thinking about it, I'm like, wait, that's not on here? I thought I heard that, but it was just it's
No,
not. But it's like everything sound. You know what it is? I think it's the fact that they put Manhattan Project on a live version of that towards the end that kind of threw me off.
is there any
And then,
counterparts on
as
here?
we what's
Oh,
that?
stick it out. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was wondering if there's any counterparts
As
on here.
we've talked about many times, so many of the songs on Power Windows start with M. So Marathon, Manhattan
Big
Project, Mystic
Middletown Dreams.
Rhythms, Middletown Dream. Anyway, for me, the Caravan BU2B single would be one, but who knows? Here's the thing. Who knows what they've got planned? You know?
right. I'm thinking that there could be a live, you know, a live album of the last show, perhaps, or maybe a live album that does have Fancy Dancer on it. You know, that these things could be, they've done this before. You know, they've teased things before and then released a bigger thing
Well,
after,
good
right?
example of that is the deluxe Farewell to Kings that featured no, sorry. Way back when different stages came out, there
Yeah,
was
that
one
that single
disc
disc.
of the Hammersmith Odeon show from 1978,
Oh,
and then that whole concert was released on the
Yeah.
Farewell to Kings Deluxe. Yeah, I love the fact that they're utilizing the songs that were new when the deluxe versions came out. Yeah, no, I'm pretty happy with the whole thing. I'm pretty happy with the packaging. Like it's Rush most of the time they as far as I'm concerned they do things right. Now, getting back to the Signals Deluxe, I don't actually own that because they never
I
put a
don't
CD
either.
version out of it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't
I
either.
did, which I don't understand why they didn't do that because it seems to me that would be cheaper than putting a vinyl version out. And I know there's live footage from the Signals tour. I know there is. It's on YouTube, them doing Digital Man and stuff. So that was a weird one. But I mean,
well,
like I said, who
I
knows?
can tell you why the quality of it wasn't to their standards,
Uh,
is what I've been told through the grapevine, right? Like the
yeah,
quality of the recordings were not on par as to what they were on Moving Pictures or Permanent Waves when they put those out, so they didn't bother.
they didn't.
Keep your bootlegs, you know.
Yeah.
They're
Well,
they're perfectionists, you know. I mean,
yeah.
they're if it's not perfect, they're not going to put it out. So,
But the other thing is that things surface over time. Like, just skipping bands to a little bit. For as Kiss fans, we were told for years there was no footage from the Asylum, like no live footage from the Asylum era. Well, what's coming out? A concert from the Asylum era, and we know there's a lot more footage than that. So who knows what might come around the corner? I mean, I look forward to these. I love the fact that, when they do stick the live versions out, I think that the bonus stuff on the moving pictures deluxe is like Exit Stage Left on steroids.
Yeah,
The
best
concert
one. Yep.
But all in all, I mean, if any Rush fans out, no, no pun intended, right? But if any fans out there are on the fence about buying this, don't be on the fence. Save your nickels and dimes, and you will not be disappointed
And don't
by.
pay the late tax by waiting too long either.
Yeah,
You
and
know?
the only advantage is that this is a band. This is a high profile band. This isn't something that's going to be one pressing of it, and then, you know, next thing you know, it's $500, right?
Yeah.
So
well, you can probably wait. And I mean, if I'm being honest, the Permanent Waves box set, I think I got that way late, like after I bought Moving Pictures, and I got it on Amazon for like half off. So like you can still, if you're patient enough, like if you don't have to have this, right? And you're not like gonna be upset if you miss out on it, then wait and you can probably get it for
that's a
a
good
little bit
point because,
less
yeah,
later on down the line.
yeah. That's sometimes a chance worth taking.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things, I'm going to put my old guy cap on here. When I was in Columbia House, every once in a while they put their box sets on for half
Yeah,
price.
good
And
days.
I'd get Led Zeppelin and Alice Cooper and a bunch
Yeah.
of those. I really don't have much more to say about this. I'm going to go around it. Do any of you have any like closing thoughts or anything that you would say to, like you said, like, Ryan makes a good point about waiting to buy it, but what is something that you would say, if you've been, lamenting the fact there hasn't been anything new to listen to from Rush, what would make you say to someone, you should get this?
Well, I would say it's that old material that many fans are not familiar with, and some of this fantastic live material that, like you said, it's almost like hearing Exit Stage Left again for the first time in a way.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of things here of great value to collectors, but also to fans that are like, I really like Rush, but I don't know these songs. Let's check them out. And I think it's also important to keep in mind this is not the last release from Rush.
No,
This is not the last
no.
release from Rush. There will be something else next year, the year after that, something cool. There's going to be more. And so anybody who still has wishes, I think should always maintain hope that we will see what you want.
Yeah. I didn't think that first single would ever be officially released because the guys have all said they don't like it. So
They disowned
here it
it.
is.
Yeah.
So Chez, Ryan, parting, closing thoughts.
Yeah, yeah, same thing. It's just like I think if you're on the fence, think of it like an experience. Like you listen to the CDs chronologically, and you're in this magnificent book, one of the best box set books I think I've ever seen. Like I can't stop talking about that artwork. And I'm just gonna make like one last comment. The last track, which is like the last song played live,
Yeah.
I thought was a very nice touch. And there's that part when Getty's thanking the audience at the end of it, and he says, "We hope to see you soon." And it kind of hits you right here
Yeah.
because, of course, we know what happened after, but it's just so nice to have that. Like Mike said, that might probably the whole show might probably come out at some time, but what a great way to kind of like they really put thought into it, like the let's make the last track of this anthology journey the last song we played live. And I just thought it was a nice touch, and really good. But that one line you get, he says, really kind of hits you there.
Yeah.
And
You can tell. I have always thought he was choked up when he did that,
yeah,
especially when Neil came up front. I'm getting
yeah,
emotional just thinking about it. And the fact that they threw in a little bit of Garden Road
yeah,
was
yeah,
just perfect, right?
yeah.
Um, yeah. And guys, we're coming up. It's weird. We're coming up on 10 years since that happened, and it's been over 5 since Neil passed away. It is so crazy. Um, Ryan, what are your closing thoughts about R50,
Well,
Rush
as
50?
yeah, as Chad said, the what you're doing, Working Man Garden Road part of it, that gives me hope that there is an R40 box set because some of my favorite deep cuts they did on R40. How it is and Animate and like everybody that watches the channel knows how much I love those two songs. But
Losing It
uh,
with
yeah,
Ben.
I saw that live,
Yeah.
and well, it wasn't with Ben.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it was with Jonathan
But
Nichols.
we got to
But
talk to Ben, which was awesome.
yes, yes, that was awesome. Twice, actually. Were you on the second one? I don't remember.
No,
But
I was just on the one, but
okay. But yeah, I mean, I think it was Chaz that said it's chronological. It's certainly is chronological by release, but it kind of gives you like it tells the whole story of the band. Like like if you're, I mean, of course, I came onto the Rush scene in like 2007, right? I'm only 31 years old, but I mean, people that live the band from the early days, I would imagine this is probably like a time capsule, or rather a time machine, where like you can literally go back in time and hear all these songs, both studio and live, the year that those songs were, recorded too. It's not like they're just kind of like, for example, like Between the Wheels is like very late and it's the R30 version of it, but that was recorded in or released in 1984, right? So it tells a whole story, it tells a timeline, and it probably lets people reminisce. I mean, at least the
yeah.
later parts of this, it lets me reminisce. So I think it's really cool that that's how they did it. I think it's really well done.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like the fact that they end where they began, like a couple songs from the first album and one that predates it. Yeah. Excellent stuff. So there you go, folks. That's our opinions on Rush 50. However you get it, CD, vinyl. I want to thank my guests for being on here. Check out Rush fans. If you are a diehard Rush fan, you know, it's a great community of people. And you know, I've met a lot of cool people because of it. You know, it was a real moment. And of course, follow Mike at Grab a Stack of Rock. You'll be seeing a lot more Chez on here. And I want to thank these gentlemen for coming on to talk
Thank you.
about an excellent set, Rush 50. We'll see you all again. Thanks for watching this edition of Tim's Vinyl Confessions. Go listen to some Rush.